A sudden shot rang out near the edge of McAllister's ranch, and Josephine realized with a lurch in her stomach that Jasper was in danger again. Three riders thundered past her hiding spot, guns gleaming under the moon. It was clear if they captured Jasper now, she might never see him alive again, and her children would be at the mercy of those who'd already tried to silence her. How did it come to this fierce showdown under a star-streaked sky? To find out, you've got to follow the whole story from Josephine's perilous jail cell escape to her desperate plan to rescue her kidnapped children. If you want to know how it all ends, whether they manage to expose the corrupt officials, whether Jasper survives his standoff, and whether Josephine can finally bring her family to safety, stay tuned through each chapter. And don't forget to subscribe to support our channel, ensuring you don't miss the heart-pounding conclusion or the many other stories we share. You won't want to miss any twist in this suspenseful tale. A heavy iron door clanged shut with a resonance that coursed through Josephine Walden like a living pulse. The noise reverberated down the cramped corridor of the makeshift jail in Prospect Fork, a frontier town that clung to illusions of respectability while darkness thrived in its corners. With a twist of a rusted key, Sheriff Clay Archer sealed Josephine's fate behind worn iron bars. Outside, the midday sun blistered the hard-packed street townspeople, going about their routines with practiced avoidance. When they glanced briefly at the jail, guilt flickered across their faces like timid sparrows. 3 days, that's all, Archer declared, his deep-set eyes cold beneath a sweat-stained hat. Judge Townsend gets in on Tuesday. Till then, you can reflect on what you did. My children, Josephine managed, fighting the dryness, cracking her lips. You know the McAllisters have them. That can't be legal. Archer avoided her gaze, turning the brim of his hat in his hands. Legal or not, it's done. If the judge says so, they'll keep them. We don't want no more trouble here, he shrugged, and without another word strode out. His boots pounded the warped floorboards, each step receding with grim finality. Josephine collapsed onto a straw-stuffed cot, pressing one palm to her ribs where bruises throbbed from the force used during her arrest. The other hand hovered protectively over her abdomen, still faintly rounded from giving birth just 8 weeks prior. She imagined Elsie, just turned 4, who'd likely be confused and frightened. Her new baby Adam was with the McAllisters as well, crying in a stranger's arms instead of the comfort of his mother's. The ache that accompanied that thought eclipsed even the dull pang of her bodily injuries. From the single barred window high in the stone wall, a wedge of dusty daylight fell across the cell. She was inside alone, with no food or water. By the suspicious smirk on Archer's face when he left, she suspected the plan was for her not to survive long enough to see Judge Townsend. The entire town, once eager to bring her baked goods and crocheted gifts when she'd been Lieutenant Marcus Walden's dutiful wife, had hardened overnight. But Josephine recalled precisely when the tide had turned. It was around 3 months ago, after she'd buried Marcus that day. Porter McAllister, the wealthiest rancher for miles around, made a subtle threat masked as condolences. "Let me know if you need anything," he'd said, eyes flicking to the stack of Army paperwork on her table, "and keep your nose out of matters that don't concern you." At first, she dismissed it, attributing his demeanor to stress over rumors of missing cattle and supplies. Yet she discovered discrepancies in the Army quartermaster's ledgers that Marcus had worked on Army payments for cavalry provisions did not match receipts from the local merchants. During the same period, certain ranchers, particularly McAllister, were gaining staggering wealth. Then came hush money offers from Mayor Hutton, along with veiled hints that if she kept quiet, people like her might find better fortune. Josephine refused, writing letters to whomever she thought might care: territorial officials, newspaper editors, even an old friend of Marcus's in the cavalry. A U.S. Marshal named Eddington arrived in Prospect Fork soon thereafter, covertly asking questions about those supply discrepancies. 3 days later, he was discovered drowned in Marlin Creek with a bullet lodged in his spine. Josephine tried to raise the alarm, but the townspeople, once sympathetic to the grieving widow, shunned her. No one listened to her accusations that McAllister and Hutton were behind the death. Then one stormy evening, Sheriff Archer and 3 men battered down her door, ransacked her home, and dragged her to this cell. They called it murder of a federal officer, pinned on her through twisted evidence, ensuring she'd never leave prison alive. And as a final stroke of cruelty, Archer and McAllister took Elsie and Adam, placing them with Blythe McAllister, Porter's wife, under the guise of protecting the children. Josephine realized with mounting dread that they might plan to kill her quietly behind bars and claim she died from jail fever. While the town nodded along, 3 days, Archer had said, But Josephine understood she might not even have that. The gritty hush of the jail weighed on Josephine like a shroud. She tried to sleep through the scorching midday heat, but thirst tormented her. Around mid-afternoon, just as delirium threatened footsteps sounded in the outer office, a feminine voice called, "Sheriff." The response was silence. Josephine recognized that voice, Olivia Townsend, the town midwife who delivered both Elsie and Adam. The door creaked open and Olivia slipped into view, her round face taut with worry. She wore a plain dress, hair tucked under a kerchief, eyes darting anxiously around the room. Spying Josephine in the cell, she crossed over, pressing a canteen through the bars. "Drink slow." Olivia whispered her words, trembling with urgency. "Too much too fast. You'll be sick." Josephine took small sips, the tepid water feeling like salvation. After a few moments, she asked, "Why help me?" "You could be ostracized or worse." Olivia smoothed her apron. "Your Marcus was a kind officer. He gave my husband steady work, and I watched your children come into this world, Josephine. I can't just let them grow up motherless." She cast a nervous glance at the door. "Everyone says you killed Marshall Eddington, but I know that's a lie. They have." Elsie and Adam. Josephine choked out, blinking back tears. "Will they be safe?" Olivia sighed. "Blythe, McAllister tries to care for them decently, but it won't last." "Hank, that's Porter's foreman. Hank Rollins, he has no sympathy for children, not his own. And rumor says Porter wants them for your husband's small pension and land grant. Keep your strength up." She reached into her satchel and passed Josephine half a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth. "Thank you," Josephine whispered, a knot of gratitude tightening her throat. "Listen," Olivia said hastily. "I overheard in the mercantile a stranger arrived last night, asking questions about you. About the letter you sent. He might be from outside, maybe an investigator." "Just hold on." Before Josephine could respond, heavy footfalls sounded. Olivia's eyes widened in alarm. She pressed Josephine's hand through the bars, then hurried out. Moments later, Archer's voice rumbled through the office, cursing that he'd missed that meddling midwife. Josephine hid the bread, sipping water sparingly as her mind churned. A stranger, possibly a friend, or an agent of her enemies. Fatigue closed in, and she dozed fitfully. Memories recurred in snatches. Marcus, as he'd once been dedicated to honesty, investigating suspicious data in quartermaster reports. The final official letter telling her of his ambush in a remote gorge, no witnesses. Body returned in a coffin. She suspected it was no accident. Could the threat to the supply lines be bigger than McAllister's petty theft? She jolted awake near dusk, hearing hoofbeats outside more men, or the rumored stranger. She didn't dare hope. Then came the rattle of keys, softer than Archer's usual clamor. A figure paused in the threshold, seeming to melt out of the darkness. "Mrs. Walden," a low voice asked. Its owner stepped into the faint lamplight, revealing a tall man with sharp cheekbones and tanned skin. The battered vest he wore bore a tarnished star. No local sheriff's badge, but something older. His posture radiated a coiled readiness that reminded her of a cat on the hunt. He was perhaps mid-30s, with black hair that hung to his shoulders and a faint slash of a scar on his left cheek. Josephine sat up straight, breath catching in her throat. "Who are you, Jasper?" "Two feathers," he said, holding out a slender brass key that glinted in the lamplight. "I've traveled far to find you, and it appears your suspicions about this town were correct. I believe you can help me bring them down." With practiced deftness, he inserted the key into the cell's lock, turning it. The old iron door swung open on rusty hinges. Shock and relief threatened to overwhelm Josephine, but she forced herself to remain focused. "What do you want from me?" she asked, stepping out gingerly, legs quivering after too many hours without proper food or rest. Two Feathers offered his arm, which she accepted for stability. "You wrote letters to various officials, correct? About Marshall Eddington, about missing army goods, about your husband's suspicious death. I received one of those letters, and I think it holds the key to unraveling a large conspiracy." She nodded slowly, recalling how she'd slipped a letter into a merchant's crate, bound for a distant city, hoping it might bypass local sabotage. This man might be her lifeline or simply another manipulator. He guided her toward the outer door, easing it open a crack to peer outside. Night had deepened, leaving the street in near darkness. Lanterns glowed in the saloon windows where a drunken laugh punctuated the hush. "We need to get you out of here," Jasper murmured. "Your jailbreak won't go unnoticed for long, my children." Josephine insisted. "Elsie and Adam are with Blythe McAllister at the ranch." "They took them," he nodded gravely. "We'll get them, but not tonight. First, we must ensure you survive. Without you, the evidence you hold in your memory is worthless. His words cut close to the truth. The documents Josephine had uncovered half-remembered figures she'd copied from Marcus's notes. Had no champion if she died. She nodded, tears threatening. All right, but do we have time? Jasper pressed a finger to his lips, stepping outside with silent stealth. He motioned for Josephine to follow, and they slipped along the jail's back wall. She caught sight of two men stationed across the street, rifles propped casually as they sipped from flasks. Obviously Will Coaster's employees. The men's laughter drifted across the dusty street, but any moment they might raise an alarm if they spotted movement. With surprising agility, Jasper helped Josephine mount one of two waiting horses behind the building, a placid gray mare that gave a gentle snort of surprise. The other was a sturdy roan. Ride east until you reach the creek, he whispered. Stay in the water for half a mile, then follow the bank north. I'll be right behind you once I make sure nobody is on our tail. Panic fluttered in Josephine's chest. She wasn't a confident rider, but necessity trumped fear. She gripped the reins and urged the mare forward, skirting the dim glow of the saloon. The watchers remained oblivious, their conversation loud enough to mask hoofbeats. At the creek, Josephine guided the mare into knee-deep water. The chill against her boots reminded her how alive she was, how close she'd come to death mere hours ago. She pressed onward, her body weak from jailhouse privations, yet fueled by the desperation to reclaim her children. A single gunshot echoed behind her, followed by another. She nearly wheeled around, but realized it would accomplish nothing if Jasper had fallen. Instead, she prayed silently for him and continued upstream. Eventually, Josephine found a narrow ravine leading away from the creek, more or less northward, as instructed. She followed it until the moon stood high overhead, bathing the rugged terrain in cold silver light. Exhaustion gnawed at her consciousness. Her eyelids grew heavy, muscles trembling from the extended ride. But she dared not stop, not until she'd reached safety, whatever that meant, in a territory where Lawman might be part of the corruption that nearly claimed her life. Just as she convinced herself she'd become truly lost, hoofbeats approached. She tensed, pressing against the ravine's rocky side mine, searching for any last reserves of energy to flee if needed. But the figure emerging from the moonlit bend was Jasper, riding his roan with controlled urgency. Relief flooded Josephine. I led them astray for a bit, he said, voice low but calm. Shot in the air, spooked them into believing we headed west. But they'll figure out the ruse eventually. She nodded, too spent to manage more than a whisper. Thank you. He dismounted, guiding the roan to nuzzle the gray mare's flank in greeting, then reached up to help Josephine slip from the saddle. Her knees buckled slightly as they touched solid ground, and he caught her. Can you walk? He asked gently. I'll manage, she murmured, though pain pricked her sides and her vision swam with spots. All right, he said, guiding her to a small camp nestled between boulders that offered partial concealment. A lean-to made of canvas stretched across a rocky outcrop, and a low-burning fire crackled the embers, still faintly glowing. This is as safe as it gets, Jasper explained. At least for tonight. I've used this spot before. It's hidden from common trails. With effort, Josephine sank to the ground near the fire. Jasper rummaged through a worn saddlebag, producing a small flask of water and some dried jerky. Eat slow, he reminded her, echoing Olivia's caution. Otherwise, your stomach might rebel. She obeyed, lips cracking in a weary half-smile. You sound like my midwife, wise midwife, he said. We need you fit if we're to reclaim your children and expose whoever murdered your Marshall friend. At that, Josephine finally exhaled some measure of the anxiety that had clutched her. Her mind still reeled from the day's events. Her near death in the jail, the mysterious rescue, the knowledge that a conspiracy bigger than one small town might be at play. Who are you exactly, Jasper? You said you used to be a lawman. Now you speak of leading me to justice. Why? He removed his battered vest, revealing a worn shirt and a well-used shoulder holster. Scars laced his forearms. Faint echoes of battles survive. I was once a deputy under a federal marshal out of Fort Stratford, a man named McKeon. Our mission was to investigate large-scale theft of Army supplies, but infiltration proved more dangerous than we realized. My team, we lost contact one by one, except for Marshal Eddington, who tried continuing the investigation solo. That got him killed. Josephine's chest tightened. She recalled how Eddington had arrived quietly speaking to her about Marcus's ledgers, then vanished only to be found floating in Marlin Creek. Jasper continued, voice subdued. I came because of Eddington's last message indicating a war. Widow had discovered incriminating documents. I found out your name in a coded dispatch. He left with a safe contact. By the time I arrived, you were locked up, awaiting a convenient demise. He paused, letting the significance of his words sink in. I've faced men like McAllister before. They operate with impunity because local officials are on the take. But if we gather enough evidence, correspondences, testimonies, there's a chance. And if your children have been taken, that gives them leverage to ensure your silence. Josephine swallowed the knot in her throat. They'll kill me anyway once I'm no longer useful. His mismatched eyes, one gray-green, the other rich brown, settled on her. Not if we strike first, but we need to be tactical. We get you strong, gather the evidence you said you compiled, then retrieve your children. After that, we bring the truth to whoever's left. We can trust at the federal level. Her mind flicked to the possibility that Marcus's death might be related to the same conspiracy, an abrupt ambush that had never sat right with her. How far up does this corruption go? She asked. Jasper's grim expression confirmed her suspicion. Far, he said quietly. We have to be prepared for that. But let's start with rescuing Elsie and Adam. If McAllister uses them as hostages, it becomes more complicated. We'll gather intelligence, strike fast, and vanish before they can retaliate. Josephine nodded, feeling a spark of hope amidst the gloom. She'd found an ally in this half-Comanche ex-lawman who somehow seemed as determined as she was to see justice done. Exhaustion claimed Josephine. Soon after finishing the scant meal, Jasper insisted she take the single bedroll he'd laid out while he kept watch by the fire. The warmth lulled her into a fragile rest, her battered body grateful for the reprieve. Dreams swirled, haunted by images of Elsie's tear-streaked face, Adam's helpless cries, and Marcus's silent coffin. She awoke at dawn, stiff and sore, but with a thread of renewed vigor. Morning revealed the extent of her rescuer's preparations. Jasper had a small stash of supplies, dried foods, a canteen of precious water, and crucial documents, some in code tied to Eddington's operation. Josephine recognized traces of her own hand in the data gleaned from the supply ledgers. As they split a meager breakfast of hardtack, softened in coffee, she asked, "You mentioned you scouted near Prospect Fork. You must have ideas on how to get my children." He nodded. McAllister's ranch is about 4 miles outside town, but it's heavily guarded. He has men posted day and night, especially since your arrest. A direct approach would be suicide. She closed her eyes, visualizing the ranch layout from memory. She'd visited once back when Porter McAllister pretended cordiality. They keep the main gates locked, but there's a creek behind the orchard. It's shallower near the boundary fence, hidden by tall grass. Marcus and we once saw some workers using that route to avoid the watchman's attention. Jasper's expression brightened. That's the kind of detail we need. We can slip through at night, but first we must confirm your children's exact location. Are they both inside the big house? Or is Elsie forced to sleep in Blythe's sewing room? Or who knows, surprises. Kill, Josephine swallowed. The notion of infiltration weighed on her mind. She'd never done anything remotely like it. And after that, next, we confirm the evidence Marshal Eddington left behind. He indicated in his last coded note that he'd hidden crucial documents in the old schoolhouse on the outskirts, or possibly with a local ally. I've been investigating quietly, but Josephine's heart jumped. The schoolhouse was shut down last winter. It's nearly falling apart. He might have stashed them in the ceiling rafters, or gave them to someone he trusted. Maybe the pastor, Reverend Philip. He's always been sympathetic. Jasper grimaced. We'll see. The problem is, we lost the element of surprise. My rescue of you is bound to reach McAllister's ears. Also, I suspect a certain Army colonel might be involved. Colonel Rigsby? Josephine said with venom, recalling how Marcus had once spoken of a senior officer with suspicious dealings. He's rumored to be behind shady arms deals, always losing shipments that end up with outlaws or hostile tribes. Jasper's jaw tightened. He's more than rumored. Rigsby orchestrates these operations from behind a facade of military respectability. If he's allied with McAllister, they're unstoppable unless we produce proof. That's where Eddington's hidden documents come in. Enough to secure federal warrants, the magnitude of their enemies pressed upon them. Local law enforcement, influential ranchers, possibly even higher-ups in the Army. Josephine felt dwarfed by it all, but her maternal drive to protect Elsie and Adam refused to let despair take hold. When do we start? Tonight, Jasper said. We ride out. I'll check my vantage near the ranch to see if we can confirm the children's placement. Then we decide whether to retrieve them first or secure the evidence. Meanwhile, you must stay out of sight. The townsfolk will be searching every wagon, every stranger. He hesitated as if wrestling with a private thought. A Comanche friend left me some clothing for you. Buckskin trousers, a vest, a cloak. If you disguise yourself as a young brave, we might slip by the watchers. People generally don't look twice at a passing Indian. She nodded, swallowing her apprehension. I'll do whatever it takes. Through the morning, they refined the plan, practicing the basics of Comanche posture and sign language. Josephine felt awkward, self-conscious in the borrowed attire, her pale complexion, a dead giveaway. But Jasper produced a small pot of walnut dye painting her exposed skin to a deeper hue. The transformation startled her when she caught her reflection in a metal pan. She looked wholly different, like a ghost of her old self, yet a glimmer of her old identity remained in her eyes. The same eyes that had taught neighborhood children to read, that had borne witness to so many heartaches. And that scrap of identity comforted her, reminding her who she was fighting for: her children, her husband's memory, justice for all the victims of the conspiracy. By mid-afternoon, they broke camp. Jasper saddled the roan and prepared a second horse, a dapple gray named Lily for Josephine. She felt uneasy mounting Lily in her new disguise, knees trembling, unaccustomed to buckskin breeches and the weight of dyed hair braided to mimic Comanche styles. But she forced composure. Child rescue demanded her best. They rode in companionable silence across rolling plains dotted with sagebrush and the occasional stunted juniper. The sun inched westward, painting the sky in brilliant shades of rose and amber, a fleeting beauty that contrasted sharply with the grim task ahead. Josephine thought about baby Adam, probably wailing for a mother who had vanished overnight, and Elsie, who might feel abandoned, or believe the lies told by Archer. What if McAllister moved them? She asked softly, scanning the horizon for the ranch's silhouette. He could easily hide them in another location. Jasper's expression hardened. That's a risk. If that's the case, we adapt. But we have to start at the last known place. We have no other lead. Late evening found them atop a modest bluff overlooking McAllister's ranch. The main house sprawled to the south, 2 stories of rough-hewn logs plastered with thick mud for insulation, surrounded by a sturdy fence. Corrals flanked it on the western side, barn doors open to the mild night air. Even from a distance, lights glowed in the windows, suggesting both occupant presence and watchfulness. The orchard behind the house was darker, a block of shadow beneath the moonlit sky. A single lamp flickered near the orchard's boundary, likely a guard post or maybe a ranch hand's quarter. Jasper dismounted, handing his reins to Josephine. With stealth that hinted at an upbringing in Comanche traditions, he crept forward to a vantage where brush concealed him from the ranch. Through his spyglass, he observed the scene for long, tense minutes. Finally, he returned to her expression. Grave, I see a short figure on the porch. Possibly your Elsie. She's with a woman I believe is Blythe McAllister. The baby could be inside. 4 men patrol the perimeter. Another 2 near the barn. At least 3 more around the orchard's edge. 10 in total. Josephine calculated, her stomach twisting. They were outnumbered and outgunned. So we wait, or we try something now. He exhaled slowly, eyes scanning her newly dyed face for signs of wavering. We confirm the orchard approach you mentioned. Then either tonight if circumstances allow, or tomorrow. We can't linger long because the town is also searching for us, but this might be our best window. Colonel Rigsby is rumored to arrive soon. If he does, everything becomes worse. Josephine recalled the colonel's name from Marcus's notes. Rigsby commanded undue influence, rumored to orchestrate supply theft across multiple posts. If he allied with McAllister, the ranch would become an armed fortress. Time was short. They tethered their horses in a shallow ravine and proceeded on foot, weaving through tall grass as twilight deepened. The orchard's outline sharpened neat rows of apple and pear trees, leaves rustling in the night breeze. A fence separated orchard from ranch yard, with a small shack near the orchard's southern corner. That single lamp glowed on a makeshift table accompanied by a lone guard slouched in a chair. What about him? Josephine breathed, hardly audible. Jasper studied the man. He's dozing, probably complacent. We slip past quietly or subdue him if needed. Fear and determination coiled in Josephine's stomach. She was no trained fighter yet. The memory of Adam's hungry cries, Elsie's tears fueled her resolve. She would become whoever she needed to be to save them. They waited, hearts pounding, until the guard's silhouette slumped, further lulled by a combination of late hour and overconfidence. Then with measured steps, they moved along the orchard fence. Josephine held her breath, conscious of each crackle of grass beneath her boots. Once they reached the fence's far corner, they crouched, scanning for additional watchers. None appeared. Jasper turned to her. I can't see baby Adam from here. Blythe might keep him inside or in a nursery. Your daughter must be on the porch. If we quietly enter from the orchard side, we might snatch her first, then slip into the house for Adam. Josephine's throat tightened. The idea of splitting up appealed to her maternal instincts. She wanted to personally rescue Elsie, yet it might be safer to keep their advantage as a pair. She whispered her thoughts, and Jasper nodded. We move as one. The orchard fence is only about chest high. We can climb, then approach the porch from behind the latrine and woodpile. They set the plan. Josephine would distract any occupant on the porch by imitating a cat's yowl or some orchard creature, giving Jasper time to swoop in. It was a fragile plan, but better than storming and guns blazing. Yet as they prepared to vault the fence, the orchard guard stirred. He stretched, rising from his seat. Tension ratcheted higher. If he decided to patrol, they'd be cornered. But luck, or perhaps the guard's laziness, prevailed. He wandered a few yards, took a swig from a flask, then ambled back to his seat, head drooping, once again. Jasper offered Josephine a hand, boosting her silently over the fence. She landed on soft-soil buckskin moccasins loaned by him. Muffling the impact, he followed, equally quiet. They stood in the orchard's gloom, hearts thudding as the ranch lights glimmered a mere stone's throw away. The orchard's fruit trees provided intermittent cover. Branches rustled overhead, and the scent of ripe apples layered the night air with a sweetness that felt at odds with the peril. Creeping forward, they reached the latrine area behind the big house. Warm lamplight illuminated the porch where Josephine spotted a small figure, Elsie perched on a rocking chair. Her daughter's feet barely touched the floor, and the child leaned forward, gazing into the night as though yearning for something unseen. Next to Elsie, Blythe McAllister sat knitting by the glow of a lantern. She yawned occasionally, looking bored yet dutiful. Josephine's eyes misted at the sight of her daughter's silhouette. She wanted to rush in, scoop Elsie into her arms. Only the memory of previous training sessions, where Jasper emphasized patience, held her back. From inside the house came a faint cry. Presumably, Adam Blythe stirred, placing her knitting aside. Elsie, sweetie, she said gently, go check if old Peggy needs anything for the baby, would you? Then come right back. Elsie slid off the chair. Josephine's heart nearly burst as her daughter padded into the house, a little wisp of a figure with copper-brown hair shining in the lantern's glow. The door swung shut behind her. That might be our chance, Jasper breathed close to Josephine's ear. If Blythe is alone for a minute, we can subdue her quietly, then get inside. Josephine nodded. Her pulse roared in her ears. She was about to assault a woman who, while complicit in the wrongdoing, had presumably cared for her children, but necessity overshadowed moral qualms. They approached the porch from the side. Blythe hummed softly, likely to fight off boredom. She seemed oblivious to the danger creeping just yards away. Josephine forced her steps to remain slow, balanced, remembering how the smallest slip could rouse suspicion. At the porch steps, Jasper signaled a countdown, 3, 2, 1. He lunged forward, clasping a hand over Blythe's mouth as he pressed a dagger's hilt gently against her temple. To warn her against struggle, Josephine followed instantly, clasping Blythe's free arm to prevent flailing. Terror flashed in Blythe's eyes, her muffled scream barely audible. In a lower voice, Josephine said, we're not here to hurt you. We just want our children. Recognition dawned in Blythe's startled gaze. Josephine's disguise might fool many, but Blythe seemed to detect the truth. She nodded frantically, tears brimming. Slowly, Jasper loosened his grip, ready to silence her again. If she screamed, please, Blythe gasped in hushed tones, don't hurt me. Elsie is safe, I promise you. Baby Adam, too. I tried to do right by them. Josephine's chest heaved with conflicting emotions. Is Adam inside with Peggy? Is he truly ill? Blythe nodded vigorously. Feverish, refusing the goat's milk, not sure how to soothe him. Elsie's been worried sick, crying for you every night. Then you'll help us. We take them and leave. No one gets hurt. Blythe, understand? Trembling, Blythe agreed. Yes, I never wanted this, but Porter, he insisted. He said if I defied him, he'd do worse. Josephine exchanged a glance with Jasper. This might be easier than expected, or a trap. In a hushed flurry of emotions, Blythe McAllister guided Josephine and Jasper into the big house's rear hallway. The boards squeaked underfoot. Josephine recalled the day she'd visited the ranch as a polite guest, never imagining she'd one day sneak inside disguised as a Comanche. Dim lamplight revealed a corridor lined with hunting trophies, the eyes of mounted deer and elk seeming to glare. As they crept forward, a woman's voice murmured from a room at the hall's end. Presumably Peggy, caretaker for baby Adam Blythe, led them to a side door, pushing it open enough to peer inside. A small parlor lay beyond. With a rocking cradle by faint candlelight, Josephine glimpsed a frail older woman fussing over Adam, who whimpered restlessly. Blythe turned back, whispering Peggy's mostly deaf. She won't hear you enter unless Adam cries out loudly. She's loyal to Porter, but she's old. Just be careful. Jasper nodded, then placed a hand lightly on Josephine's shoulder. I'll watch your back. Get your son. Heart pounding. Josephine slipped into the parlor, her eyes locked onto Adam, arms flailing in feverish distress. Peggy rocked him with mechanical motions, oblivious to the intrusion. Josephine moved close enough to see the flush on Adam's cheeks, the small chest hitching with every breath. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. With measured calm, she reached forward, scooping Adam from the cradle in one fluid move. Peggy gasped, sensing movement. Who's that? She demanded. Squinting, Josephine froze, Adam cradled in her arms as Peggy let out a warbling alarm. Jasper appeared instantly, pressing a palm over Peggy's mouth. Quiet, he hissed. We don't want to hurt you. Peggy's eyes widened in terror, and she sagged. Nodding, Jasper eased his hold. The baby recognized Josephine, or perhaps her familiar warmth, and stopped fussing. Eyes drooping in exhausted relief, Josephine's heart nearly collapsed with love and sorrow. Her infant son was thinner than she'd expected. Cheeks sunken. She kissed his brow, tears smearing the walnut dye on her face. Shh, Mama's here. Before they could exit, the hall door burst open. A ranch hand, a burly man carrying a shotgun, stood there, expression contorting from confusion to rage in a heartbeat. What the hell? Blythe had tried to intercept him. No, please! He shoved her aside, raising the shotgun. Josephine's lungs seized. She clutched at him protectively, pivoting to shield him with her body. But in the same instant, Jasper flung a throwing knife in a flash of steel. The blade sank into the ranch hand's shoulder, spinning him sideways. The shotgun fired wide, blowing a chunk of plaster from the wall. Screams erupted from Peggy and Blythe. In the confusion, Josephine dashed past the wounded ranch hand. Adam in her arms, Jasper followed, retrieving his knife from the man's shoulder as he collapsed with a groan. Another door led them into the hallway, which was quickly filling with the pounding of feet. Elsie? Josephine cried, spinning to see if her daughter had emerged. Instead, she spotted the child peeking from around a corner. Mama Josephine extended an arm. Come, sweetheart. Elsie raced forward, face lit with mingled terror and hope. She clutched Josephine's leg. Is Adam okay? He's with us. Josephine assured, though tears pricked her eyes at the precariousness of the moment. The corridor thundered with more footsteps. This way, Blythe urged, grabbing a lantern from a side table. She led them to another door opening onto the orchard side, but voices approached from the orchard path. The front entrance was also compromised. Loud shouts indicating more men converging. Trapped, Josephine realized, surrounded from orchard and hallway, there was no time to choose. She pivoted to the nearest window, unlatching it. We'll go out here, Jasper helped remove the window's wooden latch. They pushed it up an orchard, breeze swirling in. Blythe yanked open the curtains, fully revealing a short drop to the orchard ground. Elsie scrambled out first, guided by Jasper's steadying arm. Then Josephine, Adam clutched tight. Blythe whispered, I can try to stall them. Say you went around front. Josephine met Blythe's gaze. You risk your husband's wrath. Blythe's eyes glittered with resigned sorrow. He was never a real husband, only a tyrant. Run. Then more men burst in from the orchard. Side lanterns painting dancing shadows across the yard. Blythe shoved Josephine and Elsie toward the open window. Shots rang out, splintering wood. Jasper cursed, returning fire from the windowsill. The orchard flickered with muzzle flashes. In the confusion, Josephine and Elsie landed outside. Josephine hunched protectively around Adam as bullets whined overhead. Jasper leapt after them, rolling across the ground. The orchard guard from earlier, roused by the fracas, sprinted forward. Jasper fired once, dropping him in a shower of apple blossoms. No time to breathe. Josephine clutched Adam, feeling his feverish breath on her neck, and seized Elsie's hand. They dashed among the orchard trees. Gunfire roared behind them as ranch hands gave chase, their yells mingling with barked commands. A bullet crashed into a trunk near Josephine's shoulder, sending splinters into her hair. Jasper guided them deeper into the orchard, weaving among the rows the darkness helped. The men tripped over roots, cursing in frustration. But a single dog barked from the barn, raising a baying chorus. "Dogs!" Josephine gasped, her voice raw. "They'll track us!" Jasper pressed a cloth into her hand. "Turpentine or some pungent chemical, reeking strongly. Wipe it behind us on the trees. Might mask our scent for a bit." They continued through the orchard, Josephine swirling the foul-smelling rag across random trunks, hoping to confuse the dogs. Elsie clung to her waist, eyes wide yet not crying. The child's resilience astounded Josephine. At the orchard's far edge, the fence loomed again. "We crossed that creek behind the orchard," Josephine hissed. "We'll be in open ground for a stretch, but we must risk it." They scaled the fence, heart in her throat. Another shot cracked the night splinters of wood exploding near her foot. She half fell to the opposite side, landing awkwardly but not releasing Adam. Elsie hopped down more gracefully, assisted by Jasper, who dropped behind them in a crouch, firing a single round at a pursuing silhouette. A sharp cry indicated a hit move, he roared. They raced toward the creek, breath ragged, the orchard receding behind them. Once they splashed into the shallow water, the dog barks faded, and gunfire became sporadic, as the orchard's gloom obstructed clear aim. Water lapped at Josephine's calves. Adam stirring fretfully, his fever weighed on her heart. Finally, they scrambled onto the opposite bank, where starlight bathed an open plain. They continued at a desperate pace until the shouts and barked orders fell behind. The McAllisters' men were cautious about crossing open ground, at night, especially if they suspected a trap. Only when no more sounds of pursuit persisted did they slow. Josephine sagged to her knees, cradling Adam. Elsie hovered, panting. Jasper's chest heaved, sweat gleaming on his brow. They had escaped, but they were miles from safety. Dawn was still hours away, and Adam needed medical attention soon. "Hold on," Josephine said, voice trembling with maternal concern, as she examined Adam's flushed face by moonlight. The baby whimpered, body hot against her arms. "We have to cool him somehow." "We can't stay in the open," Jasper cautioned, scanning the horizon. "We should move toward the foothills. Find a sheltered spot to treat him. If those men regroup, they might comb this area." Elsie clutched Josephine's leg. "Mama, is Adam going to die?" Josephine swallowed tears. "No, sweetheart. We won't let that happen." She turned to Jasper, pleading. "He's so small. Fever can kill a baby quickly." Jasper placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We'll do everything we can. I recall some Comanche remedies that might help reduce fever. There's a small ravine, a mile or so north, with a spring." "Let's go," balancing. Adam in one arm, Josephine lifted Elsie onto Jasper's horse. He mounted behind her, arms steadying the child. Josephine climbed onto her own borrowed mare, wincing at the pain flaring in her side. They set off at a careful pace through the night, ears pricked for any sign of pursuit. In the gloom, the miles stretched endlessly, each breath haunted by the possibility that the men behind them or new foes ahead could strike. Finally, they reached the ravine, where a narrow spring trickled from rocky ground. The concealed hollow provided a small measure of security. They dismounted. Josephine stripped off Adam's blanket, gently bathing him in the trickling water. The baby's cries turned to soft whimpers as the coolness touched his overheated skin. Meanwhile, Jasper stood watch at the ravine's entrance, scanning for movement. Elsie hovered close, anxious eyes flicking between her mother and the baby. "This might bring his fever down," Josephine said, voice trembling with exhaustion. "But he needs more than a cold compress." Jasper knelt to rummage in a saddle pouch. "I have herbs the Comanche use for infant fevers, white willow bark, some dried flowers I can brew into tea for you. If he's not strong enough to nurse, maybe a few drops with water. At least it's something," Josephine nodded. She had only partial supplies in her hurry, but anything might help. She carefully wrapped Adam again after cooling him, tears stinging her eyes at how lethargic he was. Marcus would have known what to do. He always had solutions. Jasper's gaze softened. "We make do, Josephine. Let's get him stable, then we ride for safety. Maybe there's a wagon or stage we can intercept to Fort Dunsmore. That was your plan, right? The fort has a hospital unit." She recalled the mention of a Dr. Caldwell there, a physician famed for pediatric expertise. "Yes, Dr. Caldwell. He might treat Adam. We can deliver the evidence, and if Rigsby or his men show up, we might find honest officers at the fort to stand with us." They worked quickly, building a tiny fire in a hollow among rocks to hide the flame. Jasper heated water in a tin cup, stirring in the herbal mixture. The pungent aroma filled the cool night air. Adam fussed, refusing the first few drops, but Josephine persisted, carefully coaxing him to swallow a minuscule amount. Elsie curled up at Josephine's side, exhaustion dragging her eyes closed. "Mama," she whispered. "I was so scared." Josephine stroked her hair, murmuring words of reassurance until the little girl slipped into sleep. Finally, as the sky showed faint hints of dawn, Josephine and Jasper found themselves huddled near the dying fire. Adam's fever had eased slightly, though not broken. They took turns dozing in short spells, one keeping watch. "You risked everything for me," Josephine said softly during her watch, glancing at Jasper's battered face in the flickering embers. "They would have executed me in that jail if you hadn't come." She shuddered at the memory. He shrugged a modest gesture. "You wrote letters that might save many lives. I heard your husband once saved a man named Gray Cloud from certain ambush. Good men's deeds ripple outward, forging alliances they never see. We owe it to them and ourselves to keep that flame alive." Fatigue etched lines in his face, and the cold hush of pre-dawn vulnerability emerged in his eyes. Josephine reached out tentatively, touching his hand. "Thank you, Jasper. For Adam. For Elsie. For me. If we ever succeed in clearing this corruption, it's thanks to you." He exhaled something akin to relief, shining in that mismatched gaze. "Let's keep them safe. Then we take the fight to men like Rigsby, who profit from suffering." 2 days later, the group arrived at Fort Dunsmore, their journey marked by relentless caution and the relentless desert sun. Each night they camped in hidden washes, rotating watch shifts. Despite the hardships, Adam's fever gradually subsided. Aided by Jasper's herbal tonics, Elsie proved a spirited little traveler, her presence granting flickers of laughter amidst the tension. Fort Dunsmore loomed ahead as a collection of stout wooden walls and squat towers. The stars and stripes fluttered from a central mast. Soldiers patrolled the parapets, their vigilance sharpened by the rumors of supply theft and renegade outlaws. Josephine and Jasper approached cautiously, Josephine once again wearing her Comanche disguise. She kept her face angled away from the guards, memories of conspirators lingering, but a surprising reception awaited them. The sergeant on duty recognized baby Adam's condition and swiftly summoned Dr. Caldwell. No questions about Josephine's dyed skin or Jasper's credentials were asked, as the baby's obvious need overshadowed formalities. Within an hour, Adam lay on a small cot in the fort's medical hut, Dr. Caldwell administering more advanced treatments for his lingering fever. Elsie hovered close, relief mingling with protective concern. Meanwhile, Josephine and Jasper found themselves summoned by the fort's commanding officer, Captain Roy Donovan, a weary-eyed man with a thick mustache. Captain Donovan listened intently as Jasper recounted their evidence. The conspirators behind the vanishings, the roles played by McAllister Mayor Hutton and Colonel Rigsby. Josephine added details about Marcus's suspicious death, her near-fatal arrest, and Marshal Eddington's final attempts to blow the lid on the corruption. The atmosphere in Donovan's office turned glacial as the full scope of the conspiracy emerged. "So Rigsby is part of it?" Donovan asked, drumming his fingers on a battered desk. "He outranks me by miles. If he's indeed guilty, we need unimpeachable proof." Josephine produced the precious packet retrieved from the root cellar, the sealed documents Eddington had compiled. She placed them on the desk. "This is it. Manifest logs, coded letters, eyewitness accounts. We just risked everything to bring them here. We're trusting you to do what's right." Donovan carefully broke the seal, skimming pages with mounting horror. "By God," he murmured, "there's enough here to indict half a dozen Army officers." And Rigsby's name appears repeatedly. He looked up, jaw set. "You realize the explosion this will cause. The Army can't sweep this under the rug. But Rigsby might have allies. You'll need protection. Testifying might be dangerous." Jasper gave a grim smile. "We're used to danger, Captain. I only ask that you share these documents with the higher chain of command, one you trust fully. I can name a couple in the Federal Justice Department. Also, we'd appreciate safe lodging for Josephine and her children until Eddington's evidence is fully processed." The captain nodded. "Done. We'll place you under protective custody, though we're short on manpower. The cavalry troop stationed here is loyal to me, not Rigsby. They'll stand guard if needed." Relief warred with lingering caution in Josephine's mind. She'd believed herself safe once before in Prospect Fork, only to be betrayed. But Donovan's sincerity seemed genuine. He had no reason to shield Rigsby or McAllister. Indeed, the documents revealed how Rigsby's racket might have deprived Donovan's own fort of much-needed supplies. That was personal. Outside dusk settled over Fort Dunsmore's walls. The scent of cooking fires drifted through the compound. Josephine returned to the medical hut, heart pounding with residual adrenaline. She found Adam sleeping peacefully, color returning to his cheeks. Elsie perched on a stool watching Dr. Caldwell with fascination. The doctor turned to Josephine with a kind smile. "Your baby's in the clear. Mrs. Walden, he'll need rest, good nourishment, but the danger's past." Tears of joy sprang to Josephine's eyes. She swept Elsie into an embrace, then gently patted Adam's tiny chest. At last, her children were safe from bullets and fever both. She glanced at Jasper. Two Feathers standing in the doorway, battered but upright, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Their gazes locked a silent acknowledgement of victory and the uncertain future that lay beyond this moment. The next weeks brought swift repercussions from the evidence Jasper and Josephine delivered. Donovan dispatched trusted writers bearing sealed copies of Eddington's documents to higher headquarters. Judge Townsend, newly assigned to investigate deeper, arrived with federal marshals, who fanned out across the region, arresting any officials linked to the scheme. News from Prospect Fork indicated that Porter McAllister tried to flee over the border, but was intercepted by a cavalry patrol, alerted by Donovan Mayor Hutton, confronted with overwhelming proof of his complicity, resigned in disgrace. Sheriff Clay Archer, cornered by legitimate federal marshals, confessed enough to seal multiple convictions in hopes of reducing his own prison term. In that swirl of justice, Josephine Walden found herself free to reclaim her life, but changed. She stayed at Fort Dunsmore a while longer, ensuring Adam's full recovery and letting Elsie bask in a semblance of normalcy. Gone were the days of teaching in a small frontier school, house, or living as the widow overshadowed by her late husband's memory. Instead, Josephine discovered a new sense of purpose, one forged by trials that tested her spirit and by allies who believed in her cause. During quieter afternoons in the fort's courtyard, Josephine would watch as Elsie and Adam napped under a cottonwood tree. She'd reflect on how close she'd come to losing them forever. In those moments, she grasped the magnitude of Jasper's intervention. What it meant that someone half Comanche, half forgotten by the systems that claimed to uphold law, had chosen to step into the line of fire for her sake. In the weeks that followed, rumors circulated that Colonel Rigsby had been arraigned at a distant army post facing charges of conspiracy theft of government property and even treason. More arrests trickled in, implicating higher-ups in the supply chain. The war of deception that had fueled conflict in the territory began to unravel. Marshal Eddington's sacrifice, Marcus Walden's covert findings, and Josephine's unwavering fight had combined into a force no longer deniable. As for Josephine and Jasper, they discovered an unspoken connection during their mutual pursuit of justice. Their shared experiences in smoke-filled orchards and precarious canyons welded a bond of mutual respect that gradually deepened into something warmer. Neither rushed to define it. Josephine was still mourning. Marcus and Jasper carried his own scars from a past riddled with tragedy. Yet in each other's presence, they found a curious solace, the sense that they were no longer alone in a harsh world that rarely offered second chances. One late afternoon, after Colonel Rigsby's trial date was confirmed, Josephine stood on the fort's rampart, gazing at the western horizon. The sun dipped low, setting the sky aflame in a wash of oranges and reds. She recalled the final letter Marcus had sent, urging her to never stop seeking the truth, no matter the cost. She felt a hand lightly brush her shoulder and turned to see Jasper, silent as ever, standing beside her. "Ready for the next step?" he asked quietly. She studied his mismatched eyes. "Yes, but I'm not sure what it is." He shrugged with a half smile. "Maybe we find out together, you, me, Elsie and Adam. There's a wide frontier that needs honest souls." Josephine exhaled, feeling tension she'd carried for months lift from her shoulders. "I'd like that," she admitted. They spoke no vows or promises. None were needed. The possibility of forging a new life, guided by the principle that had united them, truth, was enough to fill her heart with cautious but genuine hope. Reflecting on this story from my personal perspective, I see a testament to how desperate circumstances and unwavering resolve can reshape destinies. Josephine Walden's refusal to succumb, even in the face of a corrupt town and powerful conspirators, reminds us that justice often arises from ordinary people pushed to extraordinary ends, Jasper. Two Feathers straddling two worlds serves as a symbol of bridging divides, whether cultural or moral, to defend what is right. Their alliance, forged in fear but tempered by courage, reveals that moral compasses can guide us through even the darkest canyons as long as we hold on to hope. What do you think? Share your thoughts and insights. Let's discuss how resilience can topple injustice. And if their ordeal resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of human spirit triumphing over cruelty and for the next unexpected turn that might unfold in their frontier journey. When dawn finally broke, Josephine cradled Adam in her arms, his fever-reduced Elsie dozing peacefully by her side. Outside, Jasper kept watch, scars and mismatched eyes, a testament to the obstacles they had overcome together. Despite all the trials confronting the corrupt officials, escaping gunfire, and braving the night there, they were still standing. A new morning meant renewed faith that justice once awakened couldn't be silenced so easily. From a personal viewpoint, this journey highlights how even the harshest adversities can unite unlikely allies and reveal untapped strengths. Josephine discovered that courage isn't just about facing danger, but about preserving hope for loved ones. Jasper learned that trust can bloom where least expected, and in the end, no obstacle stands forever against truth and compassion. What do you think of their resilience and the risks they took? Leave a comment with your thoughts, and let's discuss how hope can spark change. Thank you for following this story. Your support keeps us sharing many more tales of bravery and determination.